A poor black boy saves a millionaire's daughter from a kidnapper, but the next day, a helicopter lands at his house with an unexpected surprise. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment where in the world you're watching from. Let's go. Jaden Williams ran through the gray streets of Detroit, his worn sneakers slapping against wet pavement. His chest burned with each breath, but he didn't dare slow down. Not yet. He glanced over his shoulder, half expecting to see dark figures pursuing him, though the narrow street behind him stood empty. 3 blocks from home, Jaden finally slowed to a walk, his 12-year-old frame trembling with adrenaline and fear. His mind kept replaying the events from 20 minutes ago in vivid flashes. He had been taking his usual shortcut home from the corner store, just a loaf of bread and some peanut butter clutched in a plastic bag, when he heard it, a girl's muffled scream. At the mouth of an alley, Jaden had frozen at the sight of 2 men in dark clothing trying to force a struggling girl into a white van. She couldn't have been much older than him. Her school uniform rumpled as she fought against her captors. Jaden hadn't thought. He'd just acted. Dropping his groceries, he grabbed a metal trash can and hurled it toward the men with all his strength. The can crashed against the van's side with a thunderous clang, spilling garbage across the asphalt. "Hey!" Jaden had shouted, his voice cracking. "Leave her alone!" The distraction worked. In the moment of confusion, the girl tore free from her captors and ran. One of the men lunged at Jaden, grabbing his jacket sleeve. Jaden twisted away, fabric tearing, but not before the man's knuckles scraped across his cheek. Stumbling backward, Jaden had bolted down the street, zigzagging through alleys until he was sure no one followed. Now, approaching his apartment building, Jaden's heart still hammered against his ribs. He touched the raw scrape on his cheek and winced. Grandma Darlene would notice. She noticed everything, even on her bad days. "Can't tell her," he muttered to himself, shoving trembling hands into his pockets. "She's got enough problems." The stairwell of the old apartment building smelled of mildew and someone's burned dinner. Jaden climbed to the 3rd floor, each step making his tired legs burn. At apartment 312, he paused, took a deep breath, and turned his key in the lock. The small living room was dim, with only the gray afternoon light filtering through worn curtains. Grandma Darlene was asleep in her faded recliner, a thin Afghan covering her legs. On the coffee table beside her, prescription bottles stood like silent sentinels, medications they could barely afford even with assistance. Jaden set down his backpack quietly and approached his grandmother. Her breathing was labored but steady, her face relaxed in sleep. The oxygen concentrator hummed softly in the corner of the room. "Hey, Grandma," he whispered, though not loudly enough to wake her. "I'm home." He slipped past her to the bathroom, closing the door silently before flipping on the harsh fluorescent light. In the spotty mirror, Jaden examined the damage. A scraped cheek, reddened and beginning to bruise, plus a small cut near his eyebrow. "Great," he sighed, wetting a washcloth to clean the wounds. The cold water stung, but he gritted his teeth and continued dabbing at the scrapes. When he'd cleaned away the dirt and dried blood, the injuries looked less dramatic, though the bruise would be harder to hide. Returning to the kitchen, Jaden realized he'd lost the groceries during his escape. He opened the refrigerator door, finding only a half-empty carton of milk, some eggs, and condiments. The cupboard wasn't much better, a can of beans, some instant oatmeal, and crackers. Jaden set a pot of water to boil and poured in the last of the oatmeal. It wasn't much of a dinner, but it would have to do until his grandmother's Social Security check arrived tomorrow. While the oatmeal cooked, he turned on the small television, keeping the volume low. The local news was just starting, and Jaden's blood froze when he heard the anchor's voice. Breaking news this evening as the attempted kidnapping of Emily Bennett, daughter of tech billionaire Robert Bennett, was foiled this afternoon by what witnesses describe as a young hero. Police are still searching for the suspects, described as 2 men in dark clothing driving a white van. The screen showed police cars surrounding a cordoned-off area that Jayden recognized as the very alley where he'd intervened. A reporter interviewed a woman who had witnessed part of the incident from her apartment window. "I just saw this young boy, couldn't have been more than 12 or 13, create this distraction. It was so brave. The girl got away and then the boy ran too. Those men could have really hurt him." Jayden's legs felt weak. He hadn't known the girl was someone important, a billionaire's daughter. He switched off the TV quickly when he heard his grandmother stirring. "Jayden? Is that you, sweetheart?" Darlene's voice was thin but warm. "Yeah, Grandma, just making some dinner." He poured the oatmeal into 2 bowls, adding a sprinkle of sugar to hers, a small luxury. When he brought her the bowl, Darlene frowned, reaching toward his face. "What happened to your cheek?" Jayden stepped back, passing her the oatmeal. "Nothing. Just tripped at school. You know how clumsy I am." She didn't look convinced, but accepted the bowl with slightly trembling hands. "Thank you, sweetheart. Was your math test today?" Jayden nodded, grateful for the change of subject. He told her about his day, or at least the parts that didn't involve saving a billionaire's daughter, as they ate their meager dinner. Later that night, after helping Darlene to bed, Jayden lay awake in his small room, replaying the afternoon's events. Had he actually saved someone? What if those men came looking for him? What if they'd recognized him somehow? Sleep came fitfully, his dreams filled with running and faceless pursuers. The next morning at Greenfield Middle School, everyone was talking about the attempted kidnapping. Jayden kept his head down, pretending to study as his classmates speculated wildly. "I heard the kidnappers were international spies," said Marcus, always the one with the most outlandish theories. "No way," countered Tanisha. "It was probably for ransom. Her dad's like super rich." Jayden focused on his notebook, trying to ignore how his heart raced every time someone mentioned the mystery kid who'd intervened. No one connected quiet Jayden Williams with the unnamed hero in the news. Why would they? He was just the skinny kid from the poor side of town, the one whose grandmother was always sick. During third period math, Mr. Peterson droned on about algebraic equations, but Jayden couldn't concentrate. Something outside the window had caught his attention. A black SUV parked directly across from the school. 2 men in dark suits stood beside it, occasionally looking toward the building. A cold sensation spread through Jayden's chest. Were they looking for him? Had someone recognized him after all? When the bell rang, Jayden gathered his things quickly and merged with the crowds in the hallway, keeping his head down. Instead of heading to the cafeteria, he ducked into the library, finding a spot between tall shelves where he could watch the front entrance through the window. The black SUV was still there. At the end of the school day, Jayden purposely waited until most students had left before slipping out a side door. He'd made it halfway across the sports field when he heard someone call his name. "Jayden Williams?" He froze, then slowly turned around. A girl about his age stood there, her private school uniform making her stand out starkly against the chain-link fence. Behind her, 2 large men in suits, security, guards clearly, maintained a watchful distance. With a jolt, Jayden recognized her as the girl from yesterday, Emily Bennett. "How do you know my name?" he asked, already backing away. "My father needs to speak with you," she said, her voice carrying a mixture of authority and nervousness. "It's important." Panic flooded Jayden's system. He turned and ran, ignoring her calls behind him. He'd made it to the street when Emily caught up, surprisingly fast in her uniform skirt and loafers. "Wait, please." She grabbed his sleeve. "You're in danger." Jayden pulled away, looking nervously at the security guards approaching. "I didn't do anything." "You saved my life," Emily said, her blue eyes intense. "The man you stopped, he wasn't working alone. They're part of an organization that kidnaps rich people's children." Her voice dropped. "And now they might be looking for you." As if to confirm her words, one of the security guards touched his earpiece, his expression hardening. "Miss Bennett, we need to go. Now." "They've found the boy's address." Emily's face paled. "How could they?" "School records, probably," the guard said grimly. "We need to move." A horrible realization dawned on Jaden. "My grandmother," he whispered, then took off running, faster than he'd ever run before. The streets blurred past him. His lungs burned and his legs ached, but fear propelled him forward. Behind him, he heard car engines revving. Emily's security detail, he hoped, and not the kidnappers. When Jaden finally reached his apartment building, he took the stairs 3 at a time. At his door, he fumbled with his key, hands shaking so badly he could barely fit it in the lock. He burst into the apartment, calling out, "Grandma, we need to go!" But the scene that greeted him stopped him cold. Grandma Darlene was sitting in her recliner, looking bewildered but calm. Across from her, in a chair that had been pulled from their small dining table, sat a distinguished man in an expensive suit. His silver-streaked hair was perfectly styled, his posture impeccable, despite the humble surroundings. "Jaden," Darlene said, confusion evident in her voice, "this nice gentleman says you saved his daughter's life yesterday. Is that true?" Before Jaden could respond, the sound of breaking glass shattered the moment. Black-gloved hands smashed through the window and masked figures began climbing into the apartment. Robert Bennett leapt to his feet just as the door crashed open behind Jaden, revealing more masked intruders. One of Bennett's bodyguards appeared from the hallway bathroom, drawing his weapon, but was immediately shot with what looked like a tranquilizer dart. He crumpled to the floor as chaos erupted in the small apartment. "Get down!" Bennett shouted, pulling Darlene from her chair as darts whizzed through the air. Jaden's instincts took over. He grabbed the fire extinguisher from beside the refrigerator and pulled the pin, spraying a thick cloud of white powder toward the intruders. In the confusion, he heard Bennett shouting for them to head toward the back door. Somehow, in the chaos of broken glass, shouting, and chemical fog, they managed to half-carry Darlene through the kitchen and out the service entrance. A black SUV screeched to a halt at the curb, and Emily flung open the door from inside. "Get in!" she screamed. Bennett helped Darlene into the vehicle, with Jaden scrambling in behind them. The SUV took off before the door was fully closed, tires squealing on the pavement. "They're professionals, Jaden," Bennett explained, his voice tense as the vehicle swerved through traffic. "And now you're a target, because you can identify them." Darlene, disoriented and frightened, suddenly clutched her chest and began coughing violently, each breath a desperate wheeze. "Grandma needs her medicine," Jaden cried, reaching helplessly toward her. Bennett looked at his security team. "We can't go back." He pulled out his phone, dialing quickly. "Prepare. The medical suite at the mansion. We'll be there in 20 minutes." As the SUV sped through the city streets, Jaden turned to look out the rear window. In the distance, black smoke billowed against the gray sky, smoke rising from the direction of the only home he'd ever known. The orange glow of flames reflected in the rear window as Jaden stared back at the only home he'd ever known. The building grew smaller in the distance, black smoke billowing into the evening sky. Beside him, Grandma Darlene fought for each wheezing breath, her thin frame shaking with every painful cough. "My medicine," she gasped between coughs, clutching at her chest. "She needs her inhaler," Jaden said desperately, turning to Robert Bennett. "We have to go back." The billionaire's face remained grim as he pressed a button on his phone. "Dr. Klein, prepare the medical suite. We have a respiratory emergency." He looked at Jaden with sympathetic eyes. "We can't go back, son. But I have better help for your grandmother at my home." The SUV sped through the streets of Detroit, weaving through traffic with practiced precision. In the front passenger seat, one of Bennett's security team pressed gauze against a wound on his arm where a dart had grazed him. Emily reached across the seat and squeezed Jaden's hand. She'll be okay. My dad's doctor is the best." Jaden barely registered her words, his eyes fixed on his grandmother's face as she struggled for each breath. Her lips had taken on a bluish tint that terrified him. 20 minutes later, the SUV pulled through massive iron gates and up a winding driveway. Jaden caught glimpses of manicured lawns and gardens before they stopped in front of what looked more like a palace than a house. The front door burst open and a man in a white coat rushed out with a medical bag, followed by 2 assistants wheeling a gurney. Everything happened in a blur. Darlene being carefully transferred to the gurney, an oxygen mask placed over her face, vital signs checked with practiced efficiency. "Get her inside," Dr. Klein instructed his team. "Start her on albuterol and prepare for a full respiratory workup." As they wheeled Darlene away, Jaden tried to follow, but Robert Bennett gently placed a hand on his shoulder. "Let Dr. Klein work, son. He's the best pulmonologist in the country. I flew him in from Johns Hopkins last year when my wife—" His voice trailed off. "Your grandmother is in good hands." Jaden stood frozen in the marble entryway, his worn sneakers and tattered backpack jarringly out of place against the opulent surroundings. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings. Priceless artwork adorned walls that could have contained his entire apartment building. "Come on," Emily said gently. "Let me show you where you'll be staying while your grandmother gets better." Jaden followed her numbly up a grand staircase, barely registering the luxury surrounding him. His mind was still in their burning apartment, with Darlene's medications melting in the flames. "This is your room," Emily said, pushing open a heavy wooden door. Jaden stopped in the doorway, stunned. The bedroom was larger than his entire apartment. A massive 4-poster bed dominated one wall, while floor-to-ceiling windows offered views of perfectly landscaped gardens. A flat-screen TV larger than any he'd ever seen hung on one wall, and a desk in the corner held a sleek laptop. "The bathroom's through there," Emily pointed to another door. "There should be everything you need. My dad had clothes sent up. I hope they fit okay." Jaden stepped into the room hesitantly, almost afraid to touch anything. "This is, for me?" Emily nodded, watching him curiously. "Just until your grandmother gets better." She paused. "I never got to thank you. For yesterday. You saved my life." Before Jaden could respond, a gentle knock at the door interrupted them. A woman in what appeared to be a uniform stood there with a tray. "Miss Bennett," your father asked, "me to bring some food for your guest." "Thanks, Maria. You can set it on the desk." The woman nodded and placed down a tray laden with a sandwich that looked too perfect to be real, fresh fruit, and a tall glass of something cold. When she left, Jaden finally found his voice. "I need to see my grandma. Dad said we should let the doctor work. We can check on her after you've eaten something." Emily gestured to the tray. "You must be starving." The truth was, Jaden hadn't eaten since the meager breakfast he'd had that morning. But food was the last thing on his mind. Still, he knew Grandma Darlene would tell him to mind his manners and eat what was offered. He sat at the desk and took a small bite of the sandwich, surprised by how good it tasted. "So," Emily said, sitting on the edge of the massive bed, "you really didn't know who I was when you helped me?" Jaden shook his head, swallowing. "No, I just saw you needed help." Emily studied him with curious blue eyes. "That's different. Most people only care about who my father is." Before Jaden could respond, Robert Bennett appeared in the doorway. Both children looked up expectantly. "Your grandmother is stable," he said to Jaden. "Dr. Klein has her on oxygen and medication. She's resting now." "Can I see her?" Jaden asked, already standing. Bennett nodded, briefly. "Then we need to talk about your situation." The medical suite was like a small hospital room, complete with monitoring equipment and an IV stand. Darlene looked tiny in the large bed, an oxygen mask covering most of her face. Her eyes brightened when she saw Jayden, and she reached out a thin hand. "Hey, Grandma," he said, taking her hand carefully, mindful of the IV line. "How are you feeling?" She lifted the mask slightly. "Better now." Her voice was weak but clearer than it had been in the car. "Mr. Bennett says his doctor's going to help me." Dr. Klein stepped forward, clipboard in hand. "Your grandmother has severe COPD that's been inadequately treated," he explained to Jayden. "She needs more advanced care than she's been receiving." Jayden felt a flush of shame. They'd been doing the best they could with the Medicare coverage and the little extra his after-school job provided, but he knew Darlene had been skipping doses to make her medications last longer. "The good news," Dr. Klein continued, "is that with proper treatment, we can significantly improve her condition. Mr. Bennett has arranged for a specialist consultation tomorrow." Jayden looked at Robert Bennett in confusion. "Why are you doing all this for us? You don't even know us." Bennett's expression grew serious. "Let's talk in my study. Your grandmother needs rest." After reassuring Darlene that he'd be back soon, Jayden followed Bennett down a long hallway lined with paintings that probably cost more than his entire neighborhood. Bennett's study was all dark wood and leather, with shelves of books reaching to the ceiling. Through large windows, Jayden could see the Detroit skyline in the distance. "Please sit." Bennett gestured to a leather chair that was probably worth more than everything Jayden had ever owned. Jayden perched uncomfortably on the edge of the seat. "Sir, about my grandma's treatment. We can't afford—" Bennett held up a hand. "I'm covering all expenses for your grandmother's care, Jayden. And while she recovers, you'll stay here where it's safe." "Safe? From what?" Bennett's expression darkened. "The men who tried to kidnap Emily weren't ordinary criminals. They're part of an international organization that specializes in high-profile kidnappings for ransom or political leverage." He leaned forward. "And now they know you can identify them." Jayden swallowed hard. "But why would they care about me? I'm nobody." "Because these people never leave witnesses," Bennett said grimly. "And they never fail. You're the first person who's ever successfully interfered with one of their operations." The implications slowly sank in. "So they burned down our home to get to me?" Bennett nodded solemnly. "I'm afraid so. And they won't stop looking." Jayden felt his stomach twist. "What about school? My friends? For now, it's safer if everyone believes you and your grandmother perished in that fire." The words hit Jayden like a physical blow. "But it's temporary," Bennett assured him. "Just until we can ensure these people are no longer a threat." Later that evening, after checking on Darlene again, Jayden found himself wandering the massive mansion. Everything felt unreal. The plush carpets beneath his feet, the priceless art on the walls, the vast spaces that seemed to go on forever. He eventually found himself in an enormous library. Floor-to-ceiling shelves lined every wall, with rolling ladders to reach the highest books. Comfortable reading chairs were arranged throughout the room, and a massive desk stood near the windows. "It's pretty amazing, isn't it?" Emily's voice came from behind him. Jayden nodded, still taking in the vastness of the collection. "I've never seen so many books outside of the public library." "My mom used to spend hours in here," Emily said, running her hand along a shelf. "She loved books." Jayden noticed a large portrait above the fireplace, Robert Bennett standing behind a seated woman with Emily's same blue eyes, her hand resting on the shoulder of a younger Emily. "That was painted a few months before she died," Emily said quietly, following his gaze. "Cancer. 2 years ago." "I'm sorry," Jayden said, suddenly understanding the look he'd seen in Bennett's eyes earlier. "My mom died when I was 4. Car accident." Emily nodded, a moment of understanding passing between them. She walked to a large table where photo albums were displayed. "These are hers too. She loved taking pictures." Jayden joined her, looking at photos of the Bennett family traveling the world: Paris, Tokyo, safari, and Africa. One album was dedicated to Emily's childhood, birthday parties with pony rides, Christmas mornings with mountains of presents, summer vacations on private beaches. It was a world as foreign to Jayden as another planet. A knock at the door interrupted them. One of Bennett's security team stood in the doorway. "Miss Bennett, Detective Rodriguez is here to speak with Mr. Williams about yesterday's incident." Emily's expression darkened. Dad said any police interviews would wait until tomorrow. "Mr. Bennett asked that I bring him to the study now." In the study, a heavy-set man in a rumpled suit waited. He introduced himself as Detective Rodriguez from Major Crimes. "I need to ask you some questions about what you saw yesterday," he said, pulling out a notebook. "Start from the beginning." Jayden recounted the attempted kidnapping, describing what he'd seen as accurately as possible. "Would you recognize the men if you saw them again?" Rodriguez asked, sliding a folder of photographs across the desk. Jayden flipped through the photos, stopping at one. Him. He was the one who grabbed her first. Rodriguez nodded, making a note. "Anyone else?" As Jayden continued looking through the photos, he noticed something odd about the detective's questions. They seemed more focused on what Robert Bennett had told him than on the kidnappers themselves. After the detective left, Jayden found himself unable to sleep, despite the most comfortable bed he'd ever experienced. Around midnight, he slipped out to check on his grandmother again. Passing Bennett's study, he heard raised voices. "Bringing that boy here was reckless." It was Marcus, the head of security. "I had no choice," Bennett replied. "They know who he is now." "He's seen too much already," Marcus insisted. "If he finds out about—" "He won't," Bennett cut him off firmly. "No one accesses the secure servers except me." Jayden quickly backed away from the door, heart pounding. What had he gotten himself into? The next day, while Emily was at her lessons with a private tutor, Jayden explored the mansion further. His curiosity about the secure servers led him to Bennett's study during a time he knew the billionaire was in a video conference. The computer was locked, but Jayden had learned a few tricks from kids at school. After several attempts, he managed to access some files. What he found made his blood run cold. Documents labeled Project Prometheus contained complex diagrams and technical specifications for what appeared to be some kind of global tracking system. "What are you doing?" Emily's voice made him jump. Jayden spun around, guilt written across his face. I was just..." But instead of anger, Emily's expression showed resignation. She closed the study door quietly behind her. "My dad isn't just a tech billionaire," she said softly. "He developed a security system that can track anyone on the planet, anywhere, anytime. The government, terrorists, criminals, they'd all do anything to get their hands on it." "Is that why those men tried to kidnap you?" Jayden asked, pieces starting to fall into place. Emily nodded slowly. "And why they won't stop coming after you. You're the only witness who can identify them." She hesitated. "But there's more to it than that. I've overheard things." Before she could continue, Jayden's phone buzzed with a text. It was from Dr. Klein, saying Darlene was awake and asking for him. The next day, Bennett arranged for them to visit Darlene at the hospital, where she'd been transferred for specialized tests. As they walked through the parking garage toward the SUV, Jayden noticed Marcus scanning their surroundings with unusual intensity. Halfway to the car, Marcus suddenly stiffened. "Down!" he shouted, pushing Emily and Jayden behind a concrete pillar as gunshots rang out. The security team returned fire as Bennett pulled the children toward a service exit. Running footsteps echoed behind them, and Jayden turned to see Marcus taking a bullet to the shoulder as he covered their escape. They made it to a backup vehicle, speeding away from the hospital. "What about Marcus?" Jayden asked, breathless. "My team will get him out," Bennett said grimly, making phone calls as they drove. At a safe house across town, Bennett paced while making arrangements to move Darlene to a secure medical facility. Jaden pulled Emily aside. What were you going to tell me before? About there being more to this? Emily looked around nervously. My dad's been acting strange ever since you saved me. Like he knows something about you. She lowered her voice further. The night before I was almost kidnapped, I overheard him on the phone saying they'd finally found the boy. Before Jaden could process this bombshell, Bennett's phone rang. His face darkened as he listened. We need to go back to the house, he said grimly. Now. When they arrived, the mansion's security had been breached. Bennett's study was ransacked, drawers pulled out and papers scattered. In the chaos, Jaden noticed something glinting behind a fallen book, a small USB drive that had been hidden in a hollowed-out volume. Without thinking, he pocketed it. Sir, a security officer approached Bennett. We have a situation. As Bennett stepped away to speak with him, Jaden turned to Emily. What did your dad mean about finding the boy? Before she could answer, Bennett returned, his face ashen. We have a problem, he said grimly. I need to disappear for a while. What do you mean, disappear? Emily asked, her voice rising with panic. Bennett knelt before his daughter. Trust me, sweetheart. It's the only way to keep everyone safe. He turned to Jaden. Take care of her while I'm gone. As Emily protested tearfully, Bennett pulled Jaden aside. There are things you don't know yet, he said quietly. Things about who you really are. Before he could elaborate, a security officer interrupted with urgent news. Bennett squeezed Jaden's shoulder and whispered, Whatever happens, don't trust Rodriguez. That night, as Jaden lay awake in his borrowed bedroom, his mind raced with questions. Who was he really? Why had Bennett brought him here? What was on the USB drive hidden in his pocket? While processing Emily's cryptic words and Bennett's mysterious warning, Jaden's new phone chimed with a message from an unknown number. You weren't chosen by accident. Everything that's happened was meant to find you. Jaden bolted upright in bed, heart hammering as he reread the message on his phone. You weren't chosen by accident. Everything that's happened was meant to find you. The screen's blue glow cast eerie shadows across the luxurious bedroom that still felt foreign to him. Sleep was impossible now. He pulled the USB drive from under his pillow, turning it over in his hands. Whatever secrets it contained might explain why Robert Bennett had disappeared and why everyone suddenly seemed so interested in a nobody from Detroit. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Emily stood in the doorway, her face pale in the dim light. You got one too, didn't you? She whispered, holding up her phone. Jaden nodded, showing her his screen with the identical message. Dad's been gone for 12 hours, Emily said, her voice tight with worry. The security team keeps saying he's unreachable for security reasons, but something's wrong. I can feel it. The morning news confirmed their fears. Every channel led with the same headline. Tech billionaire Robert Bennett missing, foul play suspected. Footage showed police vehicles surrounding Bennett Technologies headquarters downtown. They're saying there was a break-in at his office, Emily said, flipping between channels in the mansion's media room. Her hands trembled slightly as she operated the remote. Jaden watched the coverage with growing unease. Your dad said not to trust Detective Rodriguez. Do you think he's involved somehow? Before Emily could answer, the mansion's intercom system chimed. Miss Bennett, came the voice of Thompson, the head of household staff. Detective Rodriguez and his team have arrived with a warrant to search the premises. Emily looked at Jaden with alarm. Hide that USB drive, she whispered urgently. Jaden slipped the drive into his sock just as the media room door opened. Detective Rodriguez entered, flanked by uniformed officers and crime scene technicians. Miss Bennett, Rodriguez nodded curtly before turning to Jaden. Mr. Williams, I'm sorry to intrude, but we're investigating Mr. Bennett's disappearance. Have you found him? Emily asked, her voice carefully controlled. Not yet, Rodriguez replied, his eyes scanning the room. We have reason to believe he may have been abducted by the same organization that attempted to kidnap you." Jaden's instincts screamed danger. Something about Rodriguez's demeanor felt wrong, predatory and calculating beneath the professional veneer. "I need to speak with both of you separately," Rodriguez continued. "Standard procedure." As officers began searching the mansion, a member of Bennett's security team approached. "Miss Bennett, Dr. Klein called. Your grandmother is awake and asking for you," he said to Jaden. "He says her condition has improved enough for visitors." Rodriguez frowned. "I'm afraid that will have to wait until—" "My father left specific medical directives," Emily interrupted, with surprising authority. "Mrs. Williams' treatment can't be interrupted. Our legal team will be happy to explain the ramifications if you interfere." The detective's jaw tightened, but he nodded stiffly. "Fine. Officer Chen will accompany you to the hospital and back." In the car, Emily and Jaden exchanged glances, but remained silent, aware of Officer Chen's presence in the front seat. The hospital's private wing was quiet, with security posted at intervals along the corridor. Dr. Klein met them outside Darlene's room. "She's doing remarkably well," he reported. "The new treatment protocol is showing promising results already." Darlene looked better than Jaden had seen her in months. Her breathing was still labored, but less desperate, and some color had returned to her cheeks. "There's my boy," she smiled, reaching for his hand. When Officer Chen stepped out briefly to take a phone call, Darlene's expression grew serious. "Jaden," she whispered, "Mr. Bennett came to see me yesterday before he disappeared." Jaden leaned closer. "What did he say?" "He said he had something important to tell you, something about your mother." Darlene's grip tightened on his hand. "He said he'd known her, Jaden, before you were born." The revelation hit Jaden like a physical blow. His mother had died when he was 4, and his memories of her were fragmented at best. How could she have known a billionaire? "Did he say anything else?" Emily asked urgently. Darlene shook her head. "Just that when the time was right, he would explain everything to Jaden." The ride back to the mansion was tense with unspoken questions. As they approached the gates, Jaden noticed significantly more police vehicles than when they'd left. Inside, the atmosphere was chaotic. Crime scene techs were photographing Bennett's study while officers carried out boxes of documents and electronics. Rodriguez intercepted them in the foyer, his expression grim. "We need to talk, Mr. Williams." In the library, Rodriguez closed the doors before turning to face Jaden. "We've found something concerning," he said, sliding several photographs across a table. The images showed bank transfers, large sums deposited into an account under Darlene Williams' name, all within the past month. "That's impossible," Jaden protested. "We've never had that kind of money. You can check our apartment." He stopped, remembering their home was now ashes. These transactions originated from an offshore account linked to Robert Bennett. Rodriguez continued, watching Jaden's reaction closely. "The timing corresponds exactly with your heroic intervention in Miss Bennett's kidnapping." "You think I was involved?" Jaden's voice rose in disbelief. "That's crazy. Ask Emily. I didn't even know who she was." Rodriguez leaned forward. "What I think is that a poor kid from a bad neighborhood saw an opportunity. Maybe Bennett approached you first, offered money to intervene in a staged kidnapping to boost his public image. Maybe it went wrong. Maybe he's not really missing at all." "That's ridiculous," Emily said from the doorway, her voice cold with fury. "My father would never—" "Miss Bennett," Rodriguez cut her off without looking away from Jaden. "This doesn't concern you." "Actually, it does," came a new voice. A tall woman in an expensive suit entered the library, followed by 2 men who radiated legal authority. "I'm Amanda Reeves, Chief Counsel for Bennett Technologies. Unless you're arresting Mr. Williams, this interview is over." Rodriguez's expression hardened. We'll continue this at the station. Mr. Williams, you'll need to come with me for formal questioning. He's a minor, Reeves countered smoothly. You'll need a court order and his guardian's permission. His guardian is hospitalized and potentially complicit, Rodriguez snapped. Then, as Mr. Bennett's temporary ward, he remains under the protection of the Bennett estate until family court determines otherwise, Reeves replied. Now, unless you have a warrant specifically for Jaden Williams, I suggest you focus on finding Mr. Bennett instead of harassing children. Rodriguez glared at Reeves before storming out. The attorney turned to Jaden with a tight smile. That won't hold him off for long, she warned. Mr. Bennett left instructions to protect you, but Rodriguez is determined. After the attorney left, Emily closed the library doors. We need to see what's on that USB drive, she whispered. In Emily's room, they huddled around her laptop. The drive contained dozens of encrypted files, all requiring passwords they didn't have, except for one video file, named simply Contingency. Bennett's face filled the screen, his expression grave. If you're watching this, I've been compromised, he began. Emily, sweetheart, I'm so sorry to put you through this again after your mother. Know that everything I've done has been to protect you. He took a deep breath. Jaden, what I'm about to tell you will sound impossible. The Project Prometheus files contain evidence of a government black op program, genetic modification of human embryos to enhance specific traits. Your mother was one of our lead researchers. Jaden felt the room tilt around him. His mother had been a housekeeper, not a scientist, hadn't she? She discovered the military plan to use the modified children as operatives. Bennett continued. When she learned she was pregnant with you, she sabotaged her own research and fled. I helped hide her identity. His expression darkened. The program was supposedly terminated after a congressional investigation, but someone has restarted it. That's why I've been gathering evidence, and why they want me silenced. The video ended abruptly, leaving Jaden and Emily staring at the blank screen. That can't be true, Jaden whispered. I'm just normal. My dad wouldn't lie about something like this, Emily said softly. Before they could discuss further, shouting erupted downstairs. They rushed to the balcony overlooking the foyer to see Rodriguez returning, this time with many more officers and what looked like a SWAT team. We have a warrant for Jaden Williams' arrest, Rodriguez announced loudly. Obstruction of justice and conspiracy in the kidnapping of Robert Bennett. This is outrageous, Reeves protested, examining the warrant. This won't stand in court. He can fight it from juvenile detention, Rodriguez replied coldly. Jaden felt Emily tug his arm urgently. This way, she whispered, pulling him toward her room. Dad installed escape routes after Mom died. There's a passage behind my closet that leads to the garage. They slipped through Emily's walk-in closet to a hidden panel that opened onto a narrow staircase. The passage led them to a small door emerging behind the mansion's 8-car garage. Take my bike, Emily urged, pointing to an expensive mountain bike. Go to the marina. Dad keeps a boathouse there. The code is my birthday's 05-7. You'll be safe until we can clear this up. What about you? Jaden asked, hesitating. They don't suspect me yet. I'll try to find out what Rodriguez is really after. She pressed a burner phone into his hand. Only use this to contact me. Now go. Jaden pedaled away from the mansion grounds through a service gate, heart pounding as police sirens wailed behind him. The marina was 5 miles away, mostly downhill. He stuck to back roads, constantly checking for pursuit. At the marina, he found the Bennett boathouse easily, the largest one, with pristine white paint and dark blue trim. The keypad accepted Emily's birthday, and Jaden slipped inside, locking the door behind him. The interior was dark and quiet, smelling of wood and water. Jaden fumbled for a light switch and froze when he heard a voice behind him. I've been waiting for you. Jaden spun around to find himself face to face with one of the masked men from the kidnapping attempt. As he backed away, the man reached up and removed his mask, revealing a face Jaden recognized. "Marcus?" Jaden gasped, staring at Bennett's security chief who was supposedly injured. "What are you—" "Mr. Bennett knew this would happen," Marcus said, his expression grim. "That's why he disappeared voluntarily." "But why involve me in all this?" Jaden demanded. "Why did he bring me into his home if he knew it was dangerous?" Marcus studied him for a long moment before answering. "Because you weren't chosen randomly, Jaden. The kidnapping was staged to find you." "What do you mean, staged?" Jaden's voice echoed in the boathouse, his mind reeling from Marcus's revelation. "Emily was terrified. I saw her face." "Emily wasn't in on it," Marcus explained, checking the windows before drawing the blinds. "Her fear was real, but the kidnapping attempt was carefully orchestrated to find you specifically." Before Marcus could explain further, his phone buzzed. He checked the screen, his expression darkening. "Rodriguez has issued an all-points bulletin for you. They're calling you an accomplice in Bennett's disappearance." He pocketed the phone. "We need to move. This location isn't secure." "I'm not going anywhere until you explain what's happening," Jaden insisted, backing toward the door. "Why would Bennett stage a kidnapping to find me? I'm nobody." Marcus's eyes softened slightly. "That's where you're wrong, kid. You're far more important than you realize." He reached slowly into his jacket and removed a tablet. "Bennett left this for you. It explains everything." As Jaden reluctantly took the tablet, headlights swept across the boathouse windows. Marcus tensed, drawing a weapon from a concealed holster. "That's not my team," he whispered, peering through a gap in the blinds. "Police. Multiple vehicles." He turned to Jaden. "Is there a back way out?" Jaden pointed to a door leading to the dock. They slipped out just as officers began pounding on the front entrance. Under cover of darkness, they moved quietly along the marina boardwalk, ducking between boats whenever flashlight beams swept the area. They reached a small motorboat at the far end of the dock. "Get in," Marcus ordered, untying the mooring lines. "Stay low." The boat slipped away from the dock, its electric motor nearly silent as they navigated into the open water of the Detroit River. Once they were a safe distance from shore, Marcus handed Jaden a life vest. "Put this on. We're heading to a safe house across the river." As the city lights receded behind them, Jaden examined the tablet. It was locked with a fingerprint scanner. When he pressed his thumb to it out of curiosity, the screen unlocked immediately. "It's keyed to your biometrics," Marcus explained, watching Jaden's surprise. "Bennett made sure only you could access it." Before Jaden could explore its contents, police boats appeared in the distance, searchlights scanning the water. Marcus cut the engine, letting them drift in the shadow of a cargo ship. "They're looking for us," he whispered. "We'll have to swim for it when we get closer to the Canadian side." The night air was cold, and Jaden shivered at the thought of swimming in the frigid river. "What about the tablet?" "It'll be ruined." Marcus produced a waterproof bag from under the seat. "Put it in here, along with your phone." As they prepared to abandon the boat, a spotlight suddenly illuminated them. "Police! Stop your vessel immediately!" Marcus swore under his breath, gunning the engine to full power. The small boat lurched forward, zigzagging as they attempted to evade pursuit. Bullets pinged against the water around them. "They're shooting at us!" Jaden ducked down, panic rising in his throat. "They're aiming to disable the boat," Marcus shouted over the engine's roar. "Rodriguez must have told them you're dangerous." They sped beneath the Ambassador Bridge, using its massive pillars for cover. When they emerged on the other side, Marcus steered toward a dilapidated dock near an abandoned warehouse. "Run for that building," he instructed, as they bumped against the rotting wood. "Don't stop for anything." Jaden sprinted across the dock, clutching the waterproof bag containing the tablet. Behind him, Marcus exchanged gunfire with the pursuing officers. A bullet struck Marcus in the shoulder, spinning him around. "Keep going!" Marcus shouted, returning fire despite his injury. Jaden reached the warehouse door, yanking it open. He turned back just in time to see Marcus take another hit, this time to the chest. The security chief crumpled to the dock. "Marcus!" Jaden started to move toward him, but a barrage of gunfire forced him back into the warehouse. Through a broken window, he watched in horror as Rodriguez himself approached Marcus's prone form. The detective knelt beside him, saying something Jaden couldn't hear. Then Rodriguez stood, drew his weapon, and fired twice more into Marcus's chest. Shaking with shock and fear, Jaden fled deeper into the warehouse. Rodriguez had just executed Marcus in cold blood. This wasn't a police operation. It was a hunt. The abandoned building was a maze of rusted machinery and collapsed walls. Jaden navigated through the darkness, using his phone's flashlight sparingly to conserve battery. He needed to find somewhere to hide and process what was on Bennett's tablet. He eventually found a small office area with intact walls and a door he could barricade. Using a broken chair to jam the handle, Jaden sank to the floor and pulled out the tablet with trembling hands. The home screen showed only a single video file labeled "Watch Immediately." Jaden tapped it, and Robert Bennett's face appeared. "Jaden," Bennett began, his expression grave, "if you're watching this, Marcus has found you and explained that we needed to draw you out. I'm sorry for the elaborate deception, but we had to confirm you were the right boy before approaching you directly." Bennett leaned closer to the camera. "By now, Rodriguez is hunting you. He's not a real detective. He works for a shadow division of the government that wants to restart Project Prometheus using your DNA as a template. They've been searching for you since your mother disappeared with you 13 years ago." Jaden's breath caught. None of this made sense. His mother had been a housekeeper who died in a car accident when he was 4. He'd lived with Grandma Darlene his whole life. "Your blood contains unique genetic markers," Bennett continued. "You were the only successful subject in the original project, the only child who developed the enhanced capabilities without the side effects that killed the others. That's why they're desperate to find you." The recording ended with Bennett giving coordinates to another safe house and a warning: "Trust no one in law enforcement. Rodriguez has people everywhere." Jaden sat in stunned silence, trying to process Bennett's claims. Was he really some kind of genetic experiment? It seemed impossible, yet it would explain the strange message and why everyone was suddenly so interested in a random kid from Detroit. His phone buzzed with a text from Emily. "Police everywhere. Rodriguez telling media you attacked Marcus and kidnapped Dad. Getting worse. Are you safe?" Jaden quickly replied that he was hiding, but Marcus was dead, killed by Rodriguez himself. Before Emily could respond, he heard voices outside the office door. "Search every room," Rodriguez's distinctive voice ordered. "The kid can't have gone far." Jaden's heart hammered in his chest as he looked frantically for an escape route. The only option was a narrow window high on the wall. Climbing onto a filing cabinet, he managed to force it open and wriggle through, dropping into an alley behind the warehouse. Rain had begun to fall, turning the alley into a muddy channel. Jaden sloshed through puddles, keeping to the shadows as police flashlights swept the area. He needed to get as far away as possible. Hours later, exhausted and soaked to the bone, Jaden found himself in a rundown neighborhood near the river. The coordinates Bennett had given led to this area, but he couldn't risk approaching the safe house with police everywhere. Seeking temporary shelter, he slipped into an abandoned building. The interior was dark and smelled of mildew, but it was dry and seemed unoccupied. As he moved deeper inside, something hard pressed against the back of his head. "Don't move," a gruff voice ordered. "Please," Jaden whispered. "I'm just looking for shelter." "Turn around, slowly." Jaden complied, raising his hands in surrender. As he turned, he found himself staring not at a police officer but at a homeless man holding what appeared to be a pipe wrapped in cloth to mimic a gun. Relief washed over Jaden, followed immediately by wariness. The man studied him with surprisingly clear eyes. "You're that kid they're looking for," the man observed. "The one they say kidnapped that rich guy." "I didn't do anything," Jaden protested. "They're lying." The man lowered his fake weapon. "Yeah, I figured. Cops don't hunt kids this hard unless they're hiding something." He gestured to a back room. "There's others here. We don't ask questions." The others turned out to be a small community of homeless people who had claimed the building. They regarded Jaden with suspicion initially, but offered him a dry blanket and a place by their small fire. As Jaden warmed himself, a television in the corner caught his attention. It was an ancient model, but it showed the evening news. His school photo filled the screen with the caption, "Manhunt continues for kidnapping suspect." The reporter's voice cut through the room. "Police say 13-year-old Jaden Williams is considered dangerous and may be armed. He is wanted in connection with the disappearance of tech billionaire Robert Bennett and the murder of a security officer earlier today." Footage showed Rodriguez standing before microphones. "We have evidence linking Williams to an extortion plot against Mr. Bennett. Tragically, this troubled youth has now escalated to violence." The camera cut to Bennett's mansion, where Emily was being escorted to a car by officers. Her face was tear-streaked but defiant as she shouted to reporters, "Jaden is innocent. My father trusted him." As she was pushed into the vehicle, Rodriguez approached the microphones again. "We've also discovered concerning financial transactions to an account in Mr. Williams's grandmother's name. We believe this was payment for his role in the conspiracy." Jaden felt sick. They were framing him completely, twisting everything to make him look guilty. An older woman in the homeless group approached Jaden, offering him a cup of tepid soup. "You don't look like a kidnapper to me," she said quietly. "But you'd better keep moving. Cops'll check these buildings eventually." She was right. Jaden couldn't stay anywhere for long. But where could he go? His face was plastered across every news channel, and Rodriguez had apparently framed him as an armed and dangerous fugitive. He needed to reach the safe house coordinates Bennett had provided, but how could he move through a city looking for him? The homeless people here had accepted him, but they were right to want him gone. His presence put them all at risk. As Jaden sat contemplating his next move, the burner phone Emily had given him vibrated with a message. "Hospital compromised. They've taken Grandma Darlene as material witness, trying to use her to flush you out." Just as the dread of this news sank in, police sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. The homeless group began gathering their meager belongings, preparing to scatter. "They're coming," the older woman warned, extinguishing their small fire. "Time to disappear, kid." Jaden's heart pounded as he stared at the phone. They had his grandmother now, the only family he had left in the world. While he raced to stuff the tablet back into its waterproof bag, a final message from Emily appeared. "Received data from Dad. Rodriguez isn't after you for identification. He needs your genetic material to restart the Prometheus program. Your blood is the key." Jaden clutched the burner phone to his chest, the weight of Emily's message sinking into him like cold lead. Rodriguez wasn't just after him because he could identify kidnappers. He wanted Jaden's blood, his genetic material. And now they had Grandma Darlene. The sirens grew louder. Through a cracked window, flashing blue and red lights illuminated the rain-slicked streets. "You need to go now, kid," the homeless man urged, pushing a tattered backpack into Jaden's hands. "There's a tunnel system under this building. Old maintenance passages. Might lead you somewhere safer than here." Jaden nodded gratefully, sliding Bennett's tablet and the burner phone into the backpack. "Thank you," he whispered. "I'm sorry for bringing trouble." "We know trouble when we see it. the older woman said kindly, and when someone's running from it instead of causing it. A rusted metal door in the basement led to a narrow tunnel, its brick walls slick with moisture and age. Jaden switched on his phone's flashlight, illuminating just enough path ahead to navigate while conserving battery. For what felt like hours, he followed the maze of tunnels, listening intently for any sounds of pursuit. The only noises were dripping water and his own ragged breathing. His mind raced with all he'd learned: genetic modification, Project Prometheus, his mother, supposedly a scientist, not a housekeeper. Nothing made sense, yet somehow it explained everything. Why he'd always felt different, why Grandma Darlene sometimes looked at him with that strange mixture of pride and fear. The tunnel eventually opened into a drainage system that led to the river. Jaden emerged near his old neighborhood, the familiar streets providing little comfort now. Police cruisers patrolled regularly, and digital billboards flashed his school photo along with warnings about his supposed dangerous status. Pulling his hood low over his face, Jaden kept to the shadows. There was only one place to go, the place where everything began, as Bennett's message had cryptically suggested: his old apartment building. The structure stood like a blackened skeleton against the night sky, yellow caution tape fluttering in the wind. The fire had gutted most of the third floor, leaving his former home a charred ruin. Police had abandoned the scene days ago, having attributed the fire to faulty wiring, a convenient cover for the real perpetrators. Jaden approached cautiously, checking for surveillance before slipping through a gap in the fence surrounding the property. The stairwell was partially collapsed, forcing him to climb carefully over debris. The smell of smoke and chemicals still hung in the air. What remained of apartment 312 was barely recognizable. The ceiling had partially caved in, and the walls were scorched black. Rain dripped through holes in the roof, forming puddles on the warped floor. Jaden stepped carefully through what had once been their living room, memories flashing through his mind. Grandma Darlene in her recliner, their small Christmas tree in the corner, homework spread across the coffee table. All gone now. Where everything began, Jaden muttered, trying to make sense of Bennett's directions. What could possibly be here? The apartment held nothing of value, nothing secret. As he shifted a fallen beam, something caught his eye, a section of the floor that looked different from the rest. The fire damage was less severe here, almost as if something had protected it. Kneeling, Jaden ran his fingers along the edges of a square panel, finding a slight depression that hadn't been visible before the fire. He pressed it, and with a soft click, the panel lifted slightly. Jaden's heart raced as he removed the panel entirely, revealing a metal hatch with a keypad. "No way," he whispered. Uncertainty gripped him as he stared at the keypad. What would the code be? He tried his birthday. Nothing. Grandma Darlene's birthday. Still nothing. After several failed attempts, he remembered a number that had always been significant in their household. 0723. His mother's birthday. With trembling fingers, he entered the digits. The keypad flashed green, and the hatch unlocked with a pneumatic hiss. A narrow ladder descended into darkness. Jaden hesitated only briefly before climbing down, phone flashlight guiding his way. At the bottom, motion sensors detected his presence, and soft, emergency lights illuminated what appeared to be a small bunker. The space was roughly the size of their apartment above, but reinforced with concrete and metal. Computer equipment lined one wall, powered by what looked like an independent generator. A small living area included a cot, supplies, and a medical station. It was a fully functional safe house, hidden beneath their modest apartment all these years. "I've been living above this my entire life and never knew," Jaden murmured in disbelief. "I made sure of that," came a voice from the shadows. Jaden spun around, nearly dropping his phone. Robert Bennett stepped into the light, looking haggard but very much alive. His expensive suit was gone, replaced by utilitarian clothes similar to what Marcus had worn. "Mr. Bennett," Jaden gasped, "everyone thinks you've been kidnapped. Emily is safer with me presumed missing," Bennett said grimly. "Rodriguez can't leverage her against me if he thinks I'm already his prisoner somewhere." He gestured to the computers. "This bunker was built 13 years ago, when your mother first went into hiding. One of several safe houses I established for her." Jaden's mind reeled with questions. My mother. Was she really a scientist? Yes. Dr. Lydia Williams was the most brilliant geneticist I've ever known. Bennett sighed heavily. And my closest friend. He moved to a computer terminal, typing rapidly, screens illuminated with data, images, and video files. "I've been monitoring everything from here. Rodriguez has moved your grandmother to a secure facility under the guise of protective custody. He's using her as bait." "We have to save her," Jaden insisted. Bennett nodded. "We will. But first you need to understand what you're part of." He pulled up an image of a younger version of himself, standing beside a beautiful black woman in a lab coat. "This is your mother. We worked together at Bennett Technologies' biomedical division until we discovered the military's true plans for Project Prometheus." Jaden stared at the woman's face, so familiar yet somehow new to him now. She had his same eyes, his same determined expression. "Project Prometheus was designed to create humans with enhanced empathy and courage," Bennett explained. "The ability to instinctively understand others, to react optimally under pressure. The military wanted super soldiers who could predict enemy actions, who would never break under interrogation, who could infiltrate any group and be accepted." He brought up more images, labs, scientific equipment, and rows of data. "Your mother discovered she was pregnant during the final phase of research. When she learned what the government planned to do with the children born from the program, she sabotaged her own research and fled with you still in her womb." "So I was modified before I was born?" Jaden asked, the reality of his existence shifting beneath his feet. "You were the only success," Bennett said softly. "The other embryos developed complications. Some were born with overwhelming empathy that caused psychological breakdowns. Others developed aggressive tendencies that couldn't be controlled. Your mother adjusted your genetic sequence perfectly, enhancing your natural abilities while maintaining balance." The implications slowly sank in, the way Jaden had always seemed to know what others were feeling. His instinctive reaction to help Emily without thinking of his own safety. Even his ability to navigate social situations in a new school every time they'd moved. "After your mother's death," Bennett continued, "I lost track of you. Darlene, your real grandmother, moved constantly to stay ahead of Rodriguez's people. It was only recently that my tracking algorithms identified a potential match in Detroit." "So you staged Emily's kidnapping to draw me out?" Jaden asked, the pieces finally fitting together. Bennett nodded gravely. "I needed to confirm you were the right child. When you intervened exactly as the Prometheus protocols predicted you would, I knew we'd found you." His expression softened. "I'm sorry for the deception, but Rodriguez was closing in. We had to move quickly." "Why does Rodriguez want me so badly? What can he do with my DNA now?" "Everything." Bennett's face darkened. "Your blood contains the key to successfully replicating the Prometheus modifications. With it, Rodriguez could create an entire generation of controllable empaths, perfect spies, negotiators, and soldiers who can manipulate emotions and predict reactions. The ultimate human weapons." A sudden alarm blared from one of the computer screens. Bennett rushed to the terminal, typing frantically. "They've found us," he muttered. "Thermal imaging must have picked up our heat signatures." On a security monitor, Jaden could see multiple SUVs pulling up around the abandoned apartment building. Armed figures in tactical gear poured out, surrounding all exits. "Is there another way out?" Jaden asked, panic rising. There's a secondary exit that leads to the sewer system, Bennett replied, gathering equipment into a backpack. But we need to wipe these systems first. There's too much sensitive data. As Bennett initiated a deletion protocol, a new alarm sounded. One of the screens showed Rodriguez himself entering the building, accompanied by heavily armed men. We're out of time, Bennett said, slinging the backpack over his shoulder. Follow me. He led Jaden to what appeared to be a solid wall. With practiced movements, Bennett pressed a specific sequence of bricks, revealing a narrow passage beyond. Just as they prepared to escape, the bunker's hatch exploded inward. Smoke and debris filled the air as tactical officers began descending into the space. Go, Bennett shouted, pushing Jaden into the passage. I'll hold them off. But Emily needs you. Your grandmother needs you. Bennett pressed a small device into Jaden's hand. This has everything you need to expose Rodriguez. Now go. Reluctantly, Jaden entered the passage. Behind him, he heard gunfire and shouting as Bennett engaged the intruders. The passageway sloped downward, eventually opening into a large drainage pipe. Cold water rushed around Jaden's ankles as he moved as quickly as the slippery surface allowed. After what felt like miles, Jaden emerged through a maintenance access into a deserted park. Rain had stopped, and a pale dawn was breaking over the city. He collapsed onto a bench, exhausted and overwhelmed by everything he'd learned. The burner phone vibrated in his pocket. A message from an unknown number appeared on the screen. East entrance, red car, hurry. Approaching cautiously, Jaden spotted a red sedan idling near the park gates. When he drew closer, the passenger window lowered to reveal Emily's determined face. Get in, she said urgently. I tracked the bunker's emergency beacon. As Jaden climbed in, he noticed she wasn't alone. Behind the wheel sat a young woman he didn't recognize. This is May, Emily explained. Dad's encryption specialist. She's been helping me track his movements. Her expression grew concerned. Where's my father, is he? Rodriguez found us, Jaden said grimly. Your dad stayed behind to give me time to escape. Emily's face fell, but she quickly composed herself. Then we need to make his sacrifice count. What did you learn? As they drove through the awakening city, Jaden explained everything Bennett had revealed about Project Prometheus and his own origins. Emily listened intently, occasionally exchanging glances with May. There's something else you should know, Emily said when he finished. While you were gone, I did some digging in my father's encrypted files. The Prometheus protocol wasn't just about creating enhanced humans. She paused, choosing her words carefully. It was also about controlling them. Controlling them? How? He wanted the Prometheus protocol to prevent the military from using these abilities as weapons, May interjected. The genetic modifications include fail-safes, biological limitations to prevent the subjects from being weaponized. Emily turned to face Jaden directly. That's why Rodriguez really wants you. He doesn't just want to study your genetics. He wants to find a way to remove those safeguards. Suddenly, May swerved sharply, cursing under her breath. We've got company. In the rearview mirror, Jaden saw black SUVs gaining on them. As they sped through a tunnel, Rodriguez's voice came through on all emergency channels on the car radio. This is Detective Rodriguez. I need to talk to you about the other children from the project, Bennett. Tell him the truth about what really happened to those kids. Down, May shouted as bullets pinged against the car's frame. She swerved violently, taking them deeper into a network of service tunnels beneath the city. Jaden's heart hammered in his chest, Rodriguez's words echoing in his mind. The truth about the other children? What truth could possibly be worse than what he already knew? Those aren't regular bullets, Emily explained, her voice tight with fear. They're tracking rounds. If even one hits the car, they'll be able to follow us anywhere. The red sedan burst from the tunnel into an abandoned warehouse district. May executed a perfect drift turn into an open loading bay, cutting the engine and lights immediately. Move, she ordered, grabbing a backpack from the trunk. They'll be here in less than 2 minutes. They sprinted through the dusty warehouse to a freight elevator shaft. Using a small device from her pack, May bypassed the ancient security system, and the elevator groaned to life. "Where are we going?" Jaden asked as they descended deep beneath the building. "One of my father's contingency sites," Emily said, checking the burner phone for messages. "He established dozens across the city after my mother died, all off-grid." The elevator opened to reveal a, surprisingly, modern facility, a stark contrast to the decrepit building above. Computer terminals lined one wall, while the opposite side contained living quarters, medical supplies, and food storage. "Welcome to Bunker 17, May said, immediately activating security protocols at the main terminal. "Rodriguez's people might track us to the warehouse, but they won't find this place." As Emily set up communications equipment, Jaden slumped against a wall, the exhaustion of the past days finally catching up to him. His entire world had been upended in less than a week. He'd gone from being a nobody kid in Detroit to a fugitive with modified DNA, the target of a government conspiracy. "You should rest," Emily said gently, handing him a bottle of water. "We're safe for now." "How can you be sure?" Jaden asked, unable to keep the bitterness from his voice. "Your dad thought the bunker was safe too." Emily's expression hardened slightly. "Because my mother designed these facilities specifically to counter the surveillance technologies Rodriguez's team uses. She was a security architect before she died." Before Jaden could respond, a secure communication line buzzed. May rushed to answer it, her fingers flying across the keyboard. "It's encrypted. High priority," she said, brow furrowed in concentration. After a moment, her eyes widened. "It's from your father!" Emily pushed forward, gripping the console. "Dad, can you hear me?" Bennett's voice came through, distorted but recognizable. "Emily, I don't have much time. Rodriguez has me at the North Point facility. I've convinced him I'll cooperate in exchange for your safety." "But I'm not safe," Emily protested. "We've been attacked, shot at." "It's a stalling tactic," Bennett interrupted. "I'm trying to buy time. Listen carefully. Rodriguez has taken Darlene to the same facility. They're using her as leverage against Jaden." Jaden pushed forward. "Is she all right? What have they done to her?" There was a pause before Bennett responded, his voice grave. "They're keeping her sedated. Rodriguez claims it's for her health, but the truth is they need her genetics too. As Jaden's biological grandmother, her DNA is valuable for their research." "But how do we get you both out?" Emily asked desperately. "You don't," Bennett replied firmly. "Not yet. First, Jaden needs to know the complete truth about Project Prometheus. The tablet has only partial information. The full files are in my private server at home, in the panic room behind the library." Static interrupted the transmission momentarily. When Bennett's voice returned, it was more urgent. "They're coming. Remember, Emily, Phoenix Protocol if anything happens to me." The line went dead. "Phoenix Protocol?" Jaden looked to Emily questioningly. "It's a fail-safe," Emily explained, her expression troubled. "If my father is killed or compromised beyond recovery, certain information gets released to specific journalists and government oversight committees." She turned to May. "Can you get us back into the mansion?" May nodded grimly. "The security system resets every 48 hours. There's a window tonight between 2 and 2:05 a.m. when we could potentially access the grounds undetected." Emily began gathering equipment. "Then we have a few hours to prepare. Jaden, you should try to get some sleep." Despite his racing mind, exhaustion won out. Jaden collapsed onto a cot in the corner, falling into an uneasy sleep filled with fragmented dreams. His mother's face from the photo Bennett had shown him, Grandma Darlene hooked up to machines, Rodriguez's cold eyes as he executed Marcus. He woke to Emily gently shaking his shoulder. "Time to go," she whispered. The journey to Bennett Mansion was tense and circuitous. They abandoned the compromised sedan for a delivery van May had borrowed through her connections. As they approached the palatial estate, Jaden was struck by how different it looked now. Once a place of overwhelming luxury, now a fortress he had to infiltrate. Security patrol passes the north garden wall every 15 minutes, May explained, studying a tablet displaying the mansion's layout. We'll have exactly 3 minutes to scale the wall and reach the service entrance between rotations. Moving with practiced precision, May led them through a gap in the perimeter sensors. Emily followed with surprising agility, clearly familiar with the property's vulnerabilities. Jaden brought up the rear, his heart pounding so loudly he feared it would give them away. They reached the service entrance without incident. Emily pressed her palm to a hidden scanner, and a small door unlocked with a soft click. "Dad installed this after my mother died," she whispered. "It doesn't connect to the main security system." The mansion was eerily quiet, with minimal lighting. They moved silently through service corridors toward the main library, freezing occasionally at distant sounds of security personnel. In the library, Emily approached a specific bookshelf, pulling volumes in a precise sequence. With a soft, mechanical hum, the entire shelf slid sideways, revealing a reinforced door with another palm scanner. "It needs both my handprint and my father's," Emily said, placing her palm on the panel. The scanner glowed red, awaiting a second authentication. "He knew your father wouldn't always be available," May said, connecting her tablet to a port beside the scanner. "There's a genetic override for emergencies." After several tense minutes, May looked up. "It's asking for a genetic match. Jaden, I need a drop of your blood." "My blood? Why would—" "Your mother helped design the system," May explained urgently. "If you're really her son, with the genetic modifications she created, your DNA should work." Hesitantly, Jaden pricked his finger on the small needle May provided. She applied the drop of blood to a small receptacle on her device. The scanner processed for several seconds before flashing green, the PAR. Reinforced door slid open with a pneumatic hiss, revealing a compact room filled with servers and monitoring equipment. "We have 4 minutes before the system alerts security that the panic room has been accessed," May said, immediately connecting to the main server. Emily directed Jaden to a specific terminal. "This contains my father's personal archives. The Prometheus files should be there." Jaden navigated through folders until he found one labeled simply Lydia. Inside were hundreds of files, research notes, video logs, and personal correspondence between his mother and Bennett. One video file was marked, "For Jaden, when the time comes." With trembling fingers, he opened it. His mother's face filled the screen. The same woman from the photograph, but now animated, alive. Her eyes, his eyes, gazed directly at the camera. "Jaden, my beautiful boy," she began, her voice sending a shock of recognition through him. "If you're watching this, then Robert has found you and you're in danger. There are things you need to know about who you are." She explained how she had discovered the military's plans to remove emotional regulation from the Prometheus subjects, creating human weapons without empathy or remorse. "The other children," she continued, her expression pained, "developed severe complications. The military insisted on continuing despite the risks. 12 children died, Jaden. I couldn't let that happen to you." As his mother detailed her escape and the safeguards she'd built into his genetics, May suddenly tensed. "We've got company," she whispered, checking her tablet. "Security team doing an unscheduled sweep." "Download everything," Emily urged, keeping watch at the door. Jaden quickly began transferring files to a portable drive. As the progress bar neared completion, his mother's final words caught his attention. "The most important thing you need to know, Jaden, is that you cannot be weaponized. I modified your genetics to include what I call the empathy lock. Your enhanced abilities are fundamentally tied to your capacity for compassion. The more you try to use your gifts to harm others, the less effective they become. This is what makes you different from what they wanted to create. This is what makes you human, not a weapon. The file transfer completed just as footsteps approached the library. They slipped out through a secondary exit his mother had mentioned in the video, narrowly avoiding the security team. Back at Bunker 17, they reviewed the downloaded files, piecing together the full scope of Project Prometheus and Rodriguez's involvement. He wasn't just working for a secret government division, Emily said, scanning through emails. Rodriguez was selling information to multiple foreign entities. He's been planning to auction off the Prometheus technology to the highest bidder. And my grandmother? Jaden asked, fear constricting his chest. Why take her? May pulled up medical files from Bennett's server. According to this, your grandmother has a rare genetic marker that helped stabilize the modifications in your DNA. Without studying her, they can't fully replicate the process. A secure message suddenly flashed on the main screen. An automated alert from Bennett's security system. The message contained surveillance footage from North Point facility showing Darlene being transferred to a medical transport vehicle. They're moving her, Emily said urgently. Probably to a more secure facility for testing. Jaden stared at the grainy image of his grandmother, lying unconscious on a stretcher. Fury and determination surged through him. We need to save her and your father now. It's not that simple, May cautioned. North Point is a black site. Officially, it doesn't exist. The security is military grade. I don't care, Jaden insisted. She's all I have left. Emily placed a hand on his shoulder. We'll find a way, she promised. Then, looking at the surveillance footage more closely, her expression changed. Wait, something's not right. Look at her hand. The camera had captured Darlene's right hand hanging slightly off the stretcher. Her fingers were positioned in a deliberate pattern, not randomly as an unconscious person's would be. That's American Sign Language, May realized, enlarging the image. She's signing something. She taught ASL at the community center years ago, Jaden explained, leaning forward. What's she saying? May analyzed the hand position. It looks like trap. As this revelation sank in, the bunker's perimeter alarm suddenly blared. On the security monitors, they watched in horror as armed tactical teams surrounded the warehouse above them. How did they find us? Emily gasped. Realization dawned on Jaden as he remembered Rodriguez's words about the other children from the project. It wasn't just me, he whispered. There must have been other successful subjects they didn't tell us about. Before Emily could respond, the main screen flickered to life with an incoming transmission. Rodriguez's face appeared, smiling coldly. Hello, Jaden, he said smoothly. I think it's time we had a conversation about what Bennett really planned to do with you. Did he tell you there were other children who survived the project? Did he tell you what happened to them? Bennett appeared suddenly in the frame, his face bruised and bloodied. Don't listen to him, Jaden. He's trying to... A guard struck Bennett, cutting him off. Rodriguez leaned toward the camera. There exists a way to save your grandmother and end this once and for all, but you'll need to trust me completely. And it will be the most dangerous thing you've ever done in your life. The image of Rodriguez's cold smile filled the screen, Bennett's bruised face visible just behind him. Jaden stared at the transmission, his hands clenched into fists. What will it take to save my grandmother? He asked, the words barely making it past the lump in his throat. Simple. Turn yourself in, Rodriguez replied. Your genetic material in exchange for her freedom. Don't do it, Emily hissed, grabbing Jaden's arm. It's obviously a trap. Rodriguez chuckled. Of course it's a trap, Miss Bennett. But it's also the only option. Your father's plan failed. Mine won't. The detective leaned closer to the camera. You have 1 hour to surrender at the Highland Park water treatment facility. Come alone, or the old woman suffers the consequences. The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving the three of them in suffocating silence. "You can't go," Emily said finally. "Once they have you, they'll kill Darlene anyway. They can't afford to leave witnesses." Jaden shook his head, determination hardening his features. "I'm not planning to just hand myself over." He turned to face Emily and May. "But surrendering, or at least appearing to, might be our only way to infiltrate their operation." May raised an eyebrow. "You want to use yourself as bait?" "We need a diversion," Jaden said. "Something to get us inside the facility, where they're holding my grandmother and your father." Emily studied him with newfound respect. "You're suggesting we let Rodriguez capture you, but on our terms." "Exactly." Jaden moved to the computer terminal, pulling up the files they'd downloaded from Bennett's server. "There must be something in here we can use. Floor plans, security protocols, anything." May's fingers flew across the keyboard, filtering through the massive data dump. "Got something. Your mother designed containment protocols for Prometheus subjects, including countermeasures in case they were captured by hostile forces." She brought up a detailed document on screen. "It's a contingency plan. How to rescue subjects without compromising their genetic material." As they reviewed the plans, a slow, dangerous smile spread across Emily's face. "My father has allies, people Rodriguez doesn't know about. People who've been monitoring the Prometheus project for years. Can we trust them?" Jaden asked. "My father did," Emily replied, pulling out a secure phone different from the burner they'd been using. "And right now, we don't have much choice." Within 30 minutes, they had assembled a rudimentary plan. Emily had contacted 3 of her father's most trusted operatives, former Special Forces soldiers who had been keeping tabs on Rodriguez for years. "They'll be in position at the water treatment facility," she explained, spreading a map across the table. 2 as maintenance workers, 1 as security. They'll create a diversion once you're inside. May added technical details. "I can hack into their communications system, but only for about 3 minutes before their security protocols kick me out. During that window, their cameras and radios will be compromised." Jaden nodded, studying the map intently. "And you're sure Darlene is there?" "The tracking signal from her medical bracelet confirms it," May said. "She's in the east wing of the facility, what used to be the administrative section before they converted it to a black site." Emily placed a hand on Jaden's shoulder. "This is incredibly dangerous if anything goes wrong." "I know," he interrupted. "But I can't abandon her, and I won't let them use my DNA to create weapons." The next hour passed in tense preparation. Jaden practiced the hand-to-hand combat techniques Marcus had begun teaching him. Emily equipped him with hidden tracking devices designed to evade standard security scans. May programmed a specialized EMP device that could temporarily disable electronic locks. "You'll only have one shot with this," May explained, handing him what looked like an ordinary asthma inhaler. "Press the top twice and throw it. 5-second delay, then it fries every electronic device within 15 feet. As the deadline approached, Emily pulled Jaden aside. "There's something else you should know." Her expression was deadly serious. "My father installed a failsafe in all his secure facilities. If Rodriguez tries to extract your DNA for weaponization, there's a way to trigger a genetic self-destruct." Jaden's eyes widened. "What does that mean exactly?" "Your body would release enzymes that would degrade the specific gene sequences they need," Emily explained. "They'd be useless to them." "But," she hesitated, "it could have severe consequences for you, potentially fatal ones. How do I activate it?" "A specific combination of chemicals. My father stored ampules in all his safe houses." She pressed a tiny glass vial into his palm. "Break this under your tongue if there's absolutely no other option." The weight of the vial felt like a boulder in Jaden's hand. "A last resort," he murmured, carefully tucking it into a hidden pocket. "Let's make sure it doesn't come to that," Emily said, her voice thick with emotion. Outside the water treatment facility, Rain fell in a steady drizzle, shrouding the perimeter in mist. Jayden approached the main gate alone, his heart pounding against his ribs. 2 armed guards immediately flanked him, patting him down and confiscating the burner phone, exactly as they'd anticipated. "He's clean," one guard reported into his radio. "Bring him in," came Rodriguez's voice in response. They escorted Jayden through the facility's entrance and down a sterile corridor. Through hidden earbuds designed by May to evade detection, he could hear her voice. "Cameras are on a loop. Emily's team is in position." The guards led him to a large room that had once been the facility's main control center. Now it contained sophisticated medical equipment and monitoring systems. Rodriguez waited in the center, flanked by white-coated technicians. "Welcome, Jayden," the detective said with a predatory smile. "I'm glad you decided to be reasonable." "Where's my grandmother?" Jayden demanded. Rodriguez gestured to a bank of monitors. One screen showed Darlene in a hospital bed, attached to various machines. "She's receiving excellent care. Cooperate and you can be reunited soon." Jayden studied the room, noting exits, personnel positions, and security measures, just as Bennett's files had taught him. "What do you want from me?" "Just a few samples," Rodriguez replied smoothly. "Blood, tissue, nothing too invasive. Then we discuss your future." "My future?" "You've only begun to tap into your potential, Jayden. The enhancements your mother built into your DNA, they're just the foundation. We can help you develop abilities you haven't imagined." As Rodriguez spoke, Jayden noticed something odd. Despite his confident words, the detective's pupils were dilated, his breathing slightly elevated. Signs of stress that most people wouldn't notice, but that Jayden could read clearly. Another aspect of his enhanced empathy. "You're lying," Jayden said calmly. "You don't just want samples. You want to replicate the Prometheus modifications without the ethical safeguards my mother installed." Rodriguez's expression hardened. "Smart boy. Bennett taught you well in your brief time together." He signaled to the technicians. "Prepare him for the procedure." In his earpiece, May's voice came through clearly. "Diversion in 3, 2, 1. An explosion rocked the far side of the facility. Alarms blared as emergency protocols activated. Rodriguez barked orders to secure the perimeter, while half the personnel rushed from the room. In the confusion, Jayden implemented the next phase of their plan. He clutched his chest dramatically, collapsing to his knees with a convincing gasp of pain. "What's happening to him?" Rodriguez demanded as technicians rushed forward. "His heart rate is spiking," one reported, checking a monitor. "Blood pressure dropping rapidly." Rodriguez grabbed Jayden by the collar. "What did Bennett give you? An anti-interrogation drug?" Through gritted teeth, Jayden gasped. "Prometheus. Failsafe." Real fear flashed across Rodriguez's face. "Get him to the medical bay, now. We can't lose those genetic markers." As they rushed him onto a gurney, Jayden caught glimpses of corridor signs, mentally mapping their route against the facility plans Emily had shown him. When they passed a junction marked East Wing Access, he knew they were close to Darlene. In his earpiece, May confirmed, "You're approaching target location. Emily's team is engaging security forces on the west side." The medical bay was a converted laboratory with state-of-the-art equipment. As technicians prepared injection sites, Jayden spotted what he'd been waiting for, a service door with the maintenance access symbol they'd identified in the plans. "Now or never," he whispered. Slipping the EMP inhaler from his sleeve, he pressed the top twice and tossed it under the central monitoring station. 5 seconds later, every electronic device in the room sparked and went dead. In the sudden darkness, Jayden moved with precision, incapacitating 2 technicians with the combat techniques Marcus had taught him. He raced through the service door into a narrow maintenance corridor. According to the plans, Darlene would be 3 rooms down on the right. As he ran, Jaden heard Rodriguez's enraged voice behind him, ordering a facility-wide lockdown. The door to Darlene's room was locked with an electronic keypad, now fried by the EMP's residual effect. Jaden forced it open with a fire extinguisher found in the corridor. Inside, Darlene lay in a hospital bed, various monitoring devices now dark from the power disruption. Her eyes flew open as Jaden rushed to her side. "Jaden," she whispered, her voice weak but lucid. "I knew you'd come." "We need to move, Grandma," he said urgently, disconnecting her from the medical equipment. "Can you walk?" "With help," she replied, surprisingly alert for someone supposedly sedated. As Jaden helped her sit up, she added, "Rodriguez underestimated me. I've been faking the severity of my condition." In his earpiece, May's voice came through with increasing static. "Emergency generators coming online in 30 seconds. South exit is your extraction point." With Darlene leaning heavily on him, Jaden navigated through the maintenance corridors. They encountered a lone guard, whom Jaden quickly subdued with a precise strike to a pressure point, another skill he'd discovered in his mother's files. They reached the south exit, just as emergency lights began flickering on. Outside, an unmarked van waited with its engine running. Emily leaned out the side door, waving them forward. "Hurry!" she called. As they approached the van, shots rang out behind them. Rodriguez had found them, his face contorted with rage as he fired repeatedly at their escaping vehicle. Inside the van, one of Bennett's operatives tended to Darlene, while another drove rapidly away from the facility. Emily hugged Jaden tightly. "You did it," she whispered. "But this isn't over. We still need to find my father." "Rodriguez will be more prepared next time," Jaden said grimly. "He knows what we're capable of now." Darlene, more clear-headed than Jaden had seen her in months, studied him with knowing eyes. "There's something different about you," she observed. "You've changed." Jaden met her gaze steadily. "I had to, Grandma. I know everything now. About Mom, about what I am." "What we both are," Darlene corrected quietly. "Your mother wasn't the only scientist in the family. I worked on the original Prometheus protocols before your mother joined the project." Emily and Jaden exchanged shocked glances. "You were part of it?" Jaden asked incredulously. "Why do you think I could fake my way through their tests?" Darlene replied with a shadow of a smile. "I helped design them." Her expression grew serious. "But there's something you both need to know about Bennett. Something he's been hiding from everyone." Before she could continue, the van swerved violently as an explosion rocked the road ahead. Through the windshield, they could see a roadblock of black SUVs and armed men. "Rodriguez's backup team," the driver shouted. "They're trying to box us in." As the van screeched to a halt, Jaden looked out the window and froze. Standing beside the lead vehicle wasn't Rodriguez, but someone he recognized from Bennett's files, Dr. Whitmore, the scientist who was supposed to have died years ago when the original Prometheus project was supposedly terminated. "Change of plans," the doctor announced through a megaphone. "Release the boy and the rest of you can live." While the operative driving the van frantically searched for an escape route, Darlene grasped Jaden's hand tightly. "You need to know the truth," she whispered urgently. "Bennett didn't save your mother from the project. He was trying to create his own version of Prometheus, one only he could control." The armored SUVs formed an impenetrable barrier across the road, their headlights cutting through the evening mist. Dr. Whitmore stood confidently at the center of the blockade, the megaphone in his hand unnecessary in the sudden silence that had fallen. "What did you just say about Bennett?" Jaden whispered to Darlene, his mind reeling from her revelation. "There's no time," she replied, her eyes fixed on the scene unfolding outside. "Whatever happens, don't let them separate us." Emily's operatives moved with practiced efficiency, assessing their limited options. The driver tried to reverse, but another vehicle had appeared behind them, completing the trap. "We're surrounded," the operative beside Darlene reported. "3 exits, all compromised." Emily's face was a mask of grim determination. "Contingency protocol. We split up, create multiple targets." Before Jaden could object, Dr. Whitmore's voice boomed through the megaphone again. "Jaden Williams, we have Robert Bennett. Surrender yourself, and he lives. You have 30 seconds to decide." As if to emphasize his point, armed personnel dragged a bound and bloodied Bennett from one of the vehicles. Even from a distance, Jaden could see the tech billionaire's face was swollen from repeated beatings. "It's another trap," Emily warned, her voice breaking slightly at the sight of her father. "I know," Jaden replied, his enhanced empathy detecting the calculated theatricality of Whitmore's display. "But we're out of options." Making his decision, Jaden reached for the door handle. "I'm going out there." "No." Both Emily and Darlene protested simultaneously. "Listen to me," Jaden said firmly. "Whitmore wants me alive. Rodriguez might have been willing to kill everyone, but Whitmore needs my cooperation. He'll negotiate." "How can you possibly know that?" Emily demanded. "Because I can read him," Jaden explained. "Just like my mother designed me to do. Whitmore's posture, micro-expressions, he's confident but cautious. He believes he needs something from me that force alone won't provide." Darlene studied her grandson with a mixture of pride and fear. "The empathy lock," she murmured. "Your mother's finest work." Jaden nodded. "I'll go out first. When they focus on me, the rest of you find a way out." Before anyone could stop him, Jaden opened the van's door and stepped out with his hands raised. The cool evening air carried the scent of rain and exhaust fumes as he walked slowly toward the blockade. "That's far enough," Whitmore called, gesturing for his men to train their weapons on Jaden. "I see Lydia's work exceeded even our highest expectations. You've become quite remarkable, young man." "Let Bennett go," Jaden demanded, keeping his voice steady despite his racing heart. Whitmore smiled coldly. "Of course, after you provide us with what we need." "And what exactly is that?" Jaden asked, buying time as he sensed movement behind him, Emily's team implementing some kind of plan. "Your cooperation," Whitmore replied simply. "The Prometheus protocol was never meant to end with a single generation. You're the prototype, Jaden, the first successful integration of enhanced cognition and empathic capabilities. With your help, we can perfect the process." From the corner of his eye, Jaden noticed Bennett struggling against his captors, trying desperately to speak through his gag. Something was wrong. The billionaire's desperation seemed focused not on his own situation, but on something else. "If I agree to help you," Jaden said cautiously, "you'll release Bennett, my grandmother, and Emily." "Naturally," Whitmore nodded, though his micro-expressions betrayed the lie. "Science requires ethical standards, after all." A sudden commotion erupted as Rodriguez pushed his way forward through Whitmore's men, his face contorted with rage. "Enough games," he snarled. "The boy is a flight risk. We take him now and extract what we need." "Stand down, Detective," Whitmore commanded, his tone icy. "Your methods have proven consistently ineffective." "My methods?" Rodriguez's laugh was bitter. "You lost the original subjects. 12 children died under your supervision. At least I delivered Bennett." The two men's confrontation gave Jaden crucial information. There was a power struggle between them, Rodriguez representing some government faction, Whitmore seemingly operating with different, perhaps private interests. Taking advantage of their divided attention, Jaden inched closer to Bennett, his enhanced perceptions heightened under stress. Something about Bennett seemed off, the pattern of his breathing, the tension in his muscles. Suddenly, Bennett locked eyes with Jaden and deliberately shifted his gaze downward 3 times in rapid succession. Following the direction, Jaden noticed something attached to Bennett's ankle, some kind of device partially concealed beneath his pant leg. "I want proof my grandmother is unharmed," Jaden announced loudly, deliberately drawing attention back to himself. "Bring her out here." "You're not in a position to make demands," Rodriguez snapped, but Whitmore held up a hand. "The boy deserves reassurance," Whitmore said smoothly. "Bring the old woman." While they argued, Jaden observed Bennett making subtle movements with his bound hands, tapping patterns against his leg that seemed deliberate rather than random. Recognition dawned as Jaden realized Bennett was using a simplified code system documented in his mother's files. "Decoy, device, activate," Jaden translated mentally. Understanding flooded through him just as armed personnel approached the van to extract Darlene. Bennett was telling him the Bennett they had captured was some kind of decoy, perhaps an advanced, lifelike drone or a surgically altered double. In that moment, Jaden made his decision. He reached into his pocket for the EMP device May had given him as backup. It wasn't as powerful as the first one, but it might create enough confusion. "I'll come with you," Jaden announced loudly, stepping closer to Bennett and the guards surrounding him. "But I want to say goodbye to my family first." Rodriguez started to object, but Whitmore silenced him with a gesture. "Let the boy have his moment. It costs us nothing." As Jaden approached the restrained figure of Bennett, he activated the EMP device in his pocket. The small electronic pulse was enough to trigger the device on Bennett's ankle. Instantly, the Bennett began convulsing, his features distorting in a way no humans could. "It's a decoy," Rodriguez shouted, drawing his weapon. Chaos erupted as the sophisticated decoy emitted a blinding flash and a deafening sonic pulse. Jaden dropped to the ground, shielding his eyes as he'd been instructed in Bennett's coded message. Gunfire erupted, but it wasn't coming from Whitmore's forces. From the surrounding woods, precise shots disabled vehicle engines and communications equipment. Bennett's backup team had arrived. Using the confusion to his advantage, Jaden scrambled back toward the van. Inside, Emily was helping Darlene into a concealed compartment beneath the floor. "My father's contingency plan," Emily explained hurriedly. "The decoy was programmed to activate if captured. The real Bennett is meeting us at the extraction point." The driver gunned the engine, smashing through the now disorganized blockade. Behind them, Whitmore's forces exchanged fire with unseen attackers in the woods. "We're not clear yet," the operative beside Jaden warned as bullets pinged against the van's reinforced exterior. "Rodriguez is in pursuit." Through the rear window, Jaden could see the detective in a commandeered vehicle, gaining on them with determined fury. Unlike Whitmore, who wanted Jaden alive and cooperative, Rodriguez seemed past caring about preserving his genetic material intact. "He's going to ram us," the driver shouted, swerving violently as Rodriguez's vehicle slammed into their rear quarter panel. The impact sent the van fishtailing across the wet road. As they struggled to maintain control, Rodriguez pulled alongside them, his vehicle forcing them toward a steep embankment. "Everyone brace!" the driver yelled as the van crashed through a guardrail and began tumbling down the slope. Jaden felt himself thrown against the reinforced ceiling, before darkness momentarily claimed him. When consciousness returned seconds later, the van lay on its side at the bottom of the embankment. Through shattered windows, he could see Rodriguez's vehicle skidding down the hillside in pursuit. "Emily, Grandma," Jaden called out, fighting through disorientation. "Here," Emily responded, her voice tight with pain. She was pinned beneath a collapsed section of the van's interior. "Get Darlene out. I'll follow." The hidden compartment had protected Darlene from the worst of the impact, but the door had jammed. Jaden pried it open with desperate strength, helping his grandmother emerge. "The river!" Darlene gasped, pointing to a dark line of water barely visible through the trees. "We can lose them there." Supporting Darlene, Jaden turned back for Emily. One of the operatives, badly injured, was already helping her free. "Go," the man urged, pressing something into Jaden's hand. a small tracking device. Rendezvous point is programmed. We'll delay them. Behind them, Rodriguez's vehicle had reached the bottom of the embankment. The detective emerged with several armed men, advancing cautiously but determinedly. With no time for arguments, Jaden and Darlene struggled through the underbrush toward the river, while Emily and the remaining operative headed in another direction to split their pursuers. The cold water of the river hit Jaden like a physical blow as they waded in, the current immediately tugging at them. "There's a boat," Darlene whispered, pointing downstream where a small craft was tethered to a half-submerged tree. "Bennett's escape route." They reached the boat just as shouts and gunfire erupted behind them. Rodriguez had spotted them and was directing his men to the riverbank. Jaden helped Darlene into the boat and untied the mooring line. The current immediately swept them downstream into the gathering darkness. Rodriguez's enraged shout faded behind them as they rounded a bend in the river. As the adrenaline of their escape began to fade, Jaden turned to Darlene. "You said Bennett wasn't trying to save my mother from the project. What did you mean?" Darlene's expression was grave in the dim moonlight. "Bennett and Whitmore were colleagues once, competing for control of Prometheus. Your mother discovered that Bennett didn't want to shut down the program. He wanted to redirect it for his own purposes." Before Jaden could process this revelation, floodlights suddenly illuminated the river ahead. A larger boat blocked their path, and at its helm stood Dr. Whitmore, a triumphant smile on his face. "Did you really think escape would be that simple?" he called out. "Rodriguez might bungle everything, but I've been tracking you since the beginning. Your mother's genetic markers have a unique electromagnetic signature, impossible to hide." As armed men secured their small boat, Whitmore approached Jaden with the confidence of a chess master revealing checkmate. "Bennett never told you the whole truth. I was there when your mother died. It wasn't a car accident. And it certainly wasn't Rodriguez who pulled the trigger." The boat rocked gently as Whitmore's men secured it alongside their larger vessel. Jaden positioned himself protectively in front of Darlene, his mind racing through potential escape options that seemed increasingly limited. "What do you mean it wasn't Rodriguez who killed my mother?" Jaden demanded, his voice steadier than he felt. Whitmore's smile was calculated, designed to unsettle. "All in good time, young man. First, let's get you both somewhere more comfortable. The river is no place for such important conversations." Two armed guards pulled Jaden and Darlene onto the larger boat. As they were led below deck to a surprisingly well-appointed cabin, Jaden cataloged every detail: the number of crew members, their weapons, the boat's layout. His enhanced perception noted the satellite communications array and the sophisticated medical equipment stored in locked cabinets. "Where are you taking us?" Darlene asked, her voice betraying none of the fatigue that had to be overwhelming her frail body. "To the truth," Whitmore replied cryptically. "Something Bennett has kept from both of you for far too long." The boat's engines roared to life, pushing them swiftly upriver. Through a small porthole, Jaden watched the shoreline blur past, mentally calculating their heading, northeast away from Detroit, possibly toward Lake St. Clair or beyond. Nearly an hour later, they approached what appeared to be an abandoned industrial complex on a private peninsula. As they docked at a concealed boathouse, Jaden glimpsed security measures that put Bennett's mansion to shame: motion sensors, infrared cameras, and armed patrols with military precision. "Welcome to the original Prometheus facility," Whitmore announced as they were escorted through underground passages, where it all began 16 years ago. The complex was a labyrinth of laboratories, medical suites, and what appeared to be training facilities. Most disturbing were the dormitory-like rooms they passed, small, sterile spaces with observation windows, some still containing children's belongings, frozen in time. "The other subjects," Jaden whispered, a chill running down his spine. "Yes," Whitmore confirmed. 12 children, all with variations of the genetic modifications your mother perfected in you. This is where they lived and died. They entered a large circular room dominated by a holographic display system. At Whitmore's command, the system activated, projecting images of children ranging from infants to preteens alongside their medical data. Subject 03, enhanced spatial reasoning, deceased age 4. Cerebral hemorrhage, Whitmore narrated clinically. Subject 07, enhanced pattern recognition, deceased age 7, autoimmune collapse. He continued through the grim catalog until reaching a file labeled Subject 12. Your designation, he explained to Jaden. The last and only successful integration, your mother's masterpiece. Darlene moved closer to Jaden, her expression hardening. Stop this theater, Harold. You're not impressing anyone. Whitmore laughed, a genuine sound that seemed out of place amidst the ghosts of failed experiments. Still fiery after all these years, Darlene. I've missed your candor in the lab. What exactly do you want from us? Jaden interrupted, his patience wearing thin. What I've always wanted, Whitmore replied simply. To complete the work we began. Your blood contains the key to successful genetic enhancement without the fatal side effects that claim the others. With it, we can perfect the process. Create humans with extraordinary capabilities that could transform our species. You mean create weapons? Darlene countered. Super soldiers with enhanced empathy to predict enemy actions. That was always the military's goal. Whitmore's expression darkened momentarily. That was Rodriguez's narrow vision. Mine is far grander. He gestured, and the holographic display shifted to show global data, population statistics, climate models, conflict zones. Humanity faces existential threats of our own making. Enhanced humans, with superior cognitive abilities and embedded ethical frameworks, could be the key to our survival as a species. Despite himself, Jaden found Whitmore's argument compelling. His enhanced empathy detected genuine belief behind the scientist's words, not the calculated deception he'd sensed from Rodriguez. If your intentions are so noble, Jaden challenged, why all the secrecy? The kidnapping? The murders? Necessary evils in a world where power and profit dictate policy, Whitmore answered without hesitation. Bennett understood this once, before his daughter's birth made him sentimental. He paused, studying Jaden carefully. Did you never wonder why he staged that kidnapping to find you specifically? Why he was so invested in a random boy from Detroit? Before Jaden could respond, the facility's alarms blared. A technician rushed into the room. Security breach at the north perimeter, multiple intruders. Whitmore's expression hardened. Rodriguez, he muttered, tenacious fool. To the technician he ordered, initiate Protocol Omega, secure our primary assets. His gaze shifted to Jaden and Darlene. It seems our conversation must continue in a more secure location. As armed guards moved to escort them deeper into the facility, a massive explosion shook the building. The lights flickered momentarily before emergency systems engaged. That's not Rodriguez's style, Whitmore observed, suddenly alert. That's Bennett, Darlene finished, a grim smile crossing her face. The next explosion was closer, breaching the outer security perimeter. In the ensuing confusion, Jaden made his move. Using techniques gleaned from his mother's files and the brief training with Marcus, he disarmed the nearest guard with startling efficiency. Run, he shouted to Darlene, tossing her the guard's keycard. As chaos erupted around them, Darlene demonstrated surprising agility for her age, navigating the complex with the familiarity of someone who had spent years within its walls. This way, she directed, leading Jaden through a maintenance corridor while alarms blared throughout the facility. You know this place, Jaden observed as they ran. I helped design it, Darlene replied grimly, before I realized what they intended to do with our research. They reached a sealed laboratory door. Darlene swiped the key card and entered a sequence on the keypad from memory. The door slid open to reveal a state-of-the-art genetic research lab. "We need to destroy the samples," Darlene explained urgently, moving to a reinforced storage unit. "Whitmore already has partial samples of your DNA from your medical records at Bennett's mansion. If he combines those with the original Prometheus research stored here, he could reverse engineer the entire process." As Darlene worked to access the storage unit, Jaden secured the laboratory door. Through the small window, he could see armed forces engaged in firefights throughout the complex, some wearing Rodriguez's tactical gear, others in unmarked black uniforms that suggested Bennett's team. "They're fighting each other," Jaden observed. "Rodriguez and Bennett, they're both after the same thing." "Yes and no," Darlene replied, her fingers flying across a terminal interface. "Rodriguez wants weapons. Bennett wants control. And Whitmore—" She hesitated. "Whitmore actually believes he's saving humanity." "And what's the truth?" Jaden asked, the foundation of everything he thought he knew continuing to crumble. Darlene's expression softened as she looked at her grandson. "The truth is that your mother created something extraordinary in you. Not just genetic enhancements, but safeguards to ensure you could never be weaponized. The empathy lock isn't just protection, it's evolution. The more you use your abilities to help others, the stronger they become." The storage unit finally opened, revealing hundreds of cryogenic sample containers. "We need to destroy them all," Darlene said, initiating a decontamination sequence that would heat the samples beyond viability. As the process began, the laboratory door exploded inward. Whitmore stood in the shattered entrance, a sleek weapon trained on them both. "Step away from the console, Darlene," he ordered. His earlier civility evaporated. 16 years of research. I won't let you destroy it again." "It's already done," Darlene replied calmly as the storage unit emitted warning beeps. "The samples are degrading as we speak." Whitmore's face contorted with rage. He redirected his weapon toward Jaden. "Then we'll simply have to take new samples." Before he could fire, another explosion rocked the corridor behind him. Through the smoke emerged a figure Jaden recognized immediately, Robert Bennett, looking battle-worn but very much alive. "Harold," Bennett acknowledged coldly, his own weapon trained on his former colleague. "Still hiding in your laboratory while others do your dirty work?" "Robert," Whitmore replied with equal venom. "Still pretending to have a conscience while building weapons in secret?" Bennett's attention shifted momentarily to Jaden and Darlene. "Are you both all right?" "No thanks to you," Darlene responded sharply. "You used my grandson as bait." "I protected him from Rodriguez for 13 years, Bennett countered, "until I couldn't anymore." "Touching reunion," Whitmore interrupted. "But perhaps we should discuss the real reason you're so invested in Subject 12, Robert. Have you told the boy the truth about his paternity?" Bennett's expression faltered for the first time. A moment of stunned silence filled the lab as Jaden processed the implication of Whitmore's words. "What is he talking about?" Jaden demanded, looking between Bennett and his grandmother. Darlene's face had gone pale. "Harold, don't. He's been through enough. He deserves to know that the great humanitarian Robert Bennett isn't just his mother's colleague," Whitmore pressed mercilessly. "Tell him, Robert. Tell him why you've gone to such lengths to find him. Tell him why his genetic profile is so unique." Bennett's composure cracked, his weapon lowering slightly. "Lydia and we were more than colleagues. When she discovered she was pregnant, we agreed to use our own child for the final Prometheus trial. With our combined genetic markers and Lydia's modifications." "You're saying—" Jaden could barely form the words, the revelation hitting him like a physical blow. "Robert Bennett is your biological father," Whitmore confirmed with cruel satisfaction. "And he used his own son as a genetic experiment." Before anyone could respond, gunfire erupted in the corridor. Rodriguez and his tactical team had reached their position, engaging Bennett's security forces in close-quarters combat. "We're out of time," Bennett urged, moving toward Jaden and Darlene. "There's an extraction point on the roof. We need to move now." Whitmore took advantage of the distraction, firing at Bennett and grazing his shoulder. As Bennett returned fire, Whitmore retreated into the chaos of the corridor. "He'll head for his secondary lab," Darlene said urgently. "He keeps backups of everything. We need to stop him before he escapes with any of the research." Bennett pressed a communication device into Jaden's hand. "Emily is coordinating the extraction team. Get to the roof with your grandmother. I'll deal with Whitmore." "After everything you've just revealed, you expect me to trust you?" Jaden asked incredulously. Bennett's expression was raw with emotion rarely displayed by the billionaire. "No, but I expect you to survive, and right now that means getting to that roof." As Bennett disappeared into the corridor after Whitmore, Jaden turned to Darlene, his world spinning with revelations. "Is it true? Is Bennett really my father?" Darlene nodded slowly, her eyes filled with pain and regret. "Yes, but now that Rodriguez has modified the Prometheus data to remove the ethical safeguards, he needs to create a generation of children like you, but without the humanity that your mother made sure you kept." A series of rapid hand signals from Jaden caught Bennett's attention. The billionaire nodded in recognition, his eyes widening as he spotted the figure standing beside Whitmore. "Dr. Whitmore isn't alone," Jaden whispered urgently to Darlene, shifting his position to shield her. "That's Dr. Lawson. He was in the files. Bennett said he died in the initial project." Bennett's face showed genuine shock as he registered the presence of his former colleague, now standing proudly beside Whitmore. The two scientists who had once competed for control of Prometheus were now apparently allies. "Change of plans," Bennett muttered, activating his communication device. "May, we need extraction at the secondary point. Alert Emily." Gunfire erupted from multiple directions as Rodriguez's forces engaged with both Bennett's security team and Whitmore's guards. The facility had descended into three-way warfare, with Jaden and Darlene caught in the crossfire. "This way," Darlene said, leading them toward an emergency stairwell while the chaos intensified around them. "There's a service elevator that should still be operational on emergency power." As they navigated through smoke-filled corridors, Jaden's enhanced senses picked up movement ahead. Rodriguez himself, accompanied by 3 tactical officers, moving to intercept them. "Stop!" Rodriguez commanded, his weapon trained on Jaden. "The boy comes with me or nobody leaves alive." Before anyone could react, the ceiling above Rodriguez collapsed in a shower of concrete and metal. Bennett's team had detonated strategic charges throughout the facility, creating both diversions and escape routes. Taking advantage of the momentary chaos, they reached the service elevator. As the doors closed, Jaden caught a glimpse of Rodriguez emerging from the debris, face bloodied, but eyes burning with determination. "He won't stop," Jaden said as the elevator began its ascent. "He needs my DNA too badly." Bennett checked his wounded shoulder, grimacing as he applied pressure to the bleeding. "Rodriguez believes your genetic material is the key to creating perfect infiltration agents. Whitmore wants to build enhanced humans to solve global crises." He looked directly at Jaden. "They're both willing to sacrifice anything, or anyone, to achieve their goals." "And what's your goal?" Jaden asked, the question that had burned inside him since learning of his true parentage finally erupting. "Why did you really use your own son as an experiment?" Pain flickered across Bennett's face, not from his physical wound. "Your mother and I believed we could create something beautiful. Enhancement without exploitation. Evolution without loss of humanity." He paused, his voice dropping. "But when the military learned what we'd achieved with you, everything changed. Lydia ran to protect you. I stayed to destroy the research. Yet here we are," Darlene interjected coldly. with both Rodriguez and Whitmore still pursuing the same goal 13 years later. The elevator shuddered to a halt 2 floors below the roof access. Bennett forced the doors open to reveal a darkened laboratory area. "We need to cross through here to reach the emergency stairs," he explained, leading them forward cautiously. As they moved through the shadows, holographic displays suddenly activated, illuminating the room with images of children, the failed subjects of Project Prometheus. Among them was a larger display showing Jaden's complete genetic profile. "My backup lab," came Whitmore's voice as he stepped into view, alongside Dr. Lawson. Both scientists held weapons, though they seemed secondary to the remote control Whitmore clutched in his other hand. "Impressive that you found us so quickly, Robert." "Harold," Bennett acknowledged tensely. "Lawrence. I thought you died when the original facility was shut down." Lawson smiled thinly. "A necessary deception. Some work is too important to abandon due to bureaucratic interference." Whitmore gestured toward Jaden with almost paternal pride. "The culmination of our life's work stands before us, the perfect synthesis of enhanced capability and ethical framework." His expression hardened. "And you wanted to hide him from the world, Robert. Keep his gifts buried in obscurity." "I wanted to give him a choice," Bennett countered. "Something the project never offered any of its subjects." While the scientists confronted each other, Jaden carefully surveyed the room, noting the positions of guards at each exit. His gaze caught on a particular holographic display, schematics for what appeared to be nursery facilities designed to house dozens of infants. "You're already planning the next generation," Jaden realized aloud. "You don't just want my DNA for research. You want to create more like me." "Precisely," Whitmore confirmed, "but without the limitations your mother built into your genetic code. The empathy lock was brilliant but unnecessary. Imagine what humanity could achieve without such constraints." A new alarm suddenly blared throughout the facility. On multiple screens, security feeds showed Rodriguez's team breaching the lower levels with heavy explosives. "It seems our detective friend is making his final move," Whitmore observed calmly. "Now we must all choose sides. Robert, despite our differences, surely you see that Rodriguez cannot be allowed to weaponize the Prometheus protocol." Bennett's expression remained guarded. "And I'm supposed to believe you won't do the same." "My aims are evolutionary, not military," Whitmore insisted. "Join us. Together we can ensure Prometheus fulfills its original purpose, advancing humanity beyond its current limitations." For a moment, Bennett seemed to consider the offer. Jaden watched him intently, trying to discern his true intentions through micro-expressions and body language. The facility shook with another major explosion. Rodriguez was getting closer. "Robert," Darlene urged, "we need to move." Bennett nodded slowly, seeming to reach a decision. "You're right, Harold. Rodriguez cannot be allowed to weaponize Prometheus." He lowered his weapon slightly. "But neither can you." In one fluid motion, Bennett activated something on his communication device. Throughout the laboratory, data servers began to emit warning signals as their contents were systematically corrupted. "No!" Whitmore lunged for the nearest terminal, trying desperately to halt the deletion process. "Do you realize what you're destroying? Decades of research." "Research that should never have continued," Bennett stated firmly. Whitmore's composure finally shattered. "Lawson, initiate contingency protocol. If we can't preserve the data, we'll preserve the source." He nodded toward Jaden. Dr. Lawson pressed a sequence on the remote, and robotic restraints emerged from concealed panels in the floor and walls, attempting to capture Jaden. With reflexes enhanced by both genetics and adrenaline, he evaded the mechanical arms, pulling Darlene with him toward a secondary exit. Bennett engaged Whitmore directly, the two men struggling for control of the scientist's weapon. "Go!" he shouted to Jaden. "Get to the roof!" As Jaden and Darlene reached the emergency stairwell, Rodriguez and his tactical team burst into the laboratory from the opposite entrance. The detective took in the scene in an instant, his weapon tracking toward Jaden. "Nobody leaves with the boy," he commanded, firing, a shot that embedded itself in the wall, inches from Jaden's head. Chaos erupted as three factions converged in violent conflict. Bennett's security team rappelled down from the ceiling, engaging Rodriguez's forces. Whitmore's guards protected their leaders while trying to recapture Jaden. Amidst the firefight, Jaden made a split-second decision. Instead of continuing toward the roof, he darted back into the laboratory, toward the central server where the most critical Prometheus data would be stored. "Jaden, no!" Darlene called after him. Dodging bullets and combatants, Jaden reached the central processing unit, the quantum computer that contained the core Prometheus algorithms. Bennett's virus was working its way through the system, but too slowly. They needed to destroy it completely. Remembering Emily's lessons on Bennett's security systems, Jaden accessed the emergency protocols, initiating a catastrophic overload of the cooling system. Warning lights flashed as the quantum processor began to overheat. "System critical failure imminent," announced an automated voice. "Evacuate immediately." Rodriguez spotted Jaden at the terminal and charged toward him, all pretense of professionalism abandoned in his desperation. "Stop. You have no idea what you're destroying." As the detective reached him, Jaden executed a perfect countermove, using Rodriguez's momentum against him and sending him crashing into the sensitive equipment. Sparks erupted as critical components shorted out. "I know exactly what I'm destroying," Jaden said firmly. "The possibility of more children being turned into weapons." The laboratory's emergency containment system activated, sealing off sections as the quantum computer began a catastrophic cascade failure. Bennett had managed to subdue Whitmore and was fighting his way toward Jaden. "We need to go, now!" he shouted over the alarms. Rodriguez, recovering quickly, made one final desperate attempt to capture Jaden. "You belong to us. Your entire existence was designed for this purpose." "My existence isn't defined by your project," Jaden responded, evading the detective's grasp, "or by anyone's plans for me." As they reached the stairwell, Whitmore's voice rang out behind them. "You can destroy the data, but you can't destroy the idea. Prometheus will continue, with or without you." They raced up the stairs toward the rooftop extraction point, the facility beginning to crumble around them as multiple systems failed catastrophically. When they finally burst onto the roof, an unmarked helicopter was descending through swirling smoke, Emily visible in the open door. "Dad! Jaden!" she called out, reaching toward them. Rodriguez appeared at the rooftop door, bloodied but determined, raising his weapon for one final attempt. Before he could fire, the structure beneath him gave way as secondary explosions tore through the facility. The detective disappeared in a shower of concrete and flame. As the helicopter lifted off with Jaden, Darlene, and Bennett safely aboard, they watched the Prometheus facility collapse in on itself, burying its secrets beneath tons of rubble. "Is it over?" Emily asked, clutching her father's arm while keeping a concerned eye on his wounded shoulder. Bennett exchanged a knowing look with Darlene before answering. "Whitmore and Lawson are resourceful, and Rodriguez's government backers won't give up easily. But the core Prometheus data is destroyed." Months later, at the prestigious Westbrook Academy, Jaden adjusted his tie nervously before stepping onto the stage to receive the Academic Honors Award. In the audience sat Darlene, now healthy, thanks to a specialized treatment derived from Jaden's unique biology, alongside the Bennetts and, surprisingly, several families from his old neighborhood in Detroit. "Jaden Williams," announced the headmaster, "for excellence in scientific ethics and humanitarian studies." As applause filled the auditorium, Robert Bennett rose to deliver the keynote address, his relationship with Jaden now acknowledged, though the full truth of Prometheus remained their closely guarded secret. "This young man," Bennett began, taught us that courage comes in many forms. He didn't just save my daughter's life. He showed us that humanity's greatest strength isn't in our ability to enhance our DNA, but in our capacity to choose compassion over advantage, community over self-interest. As Jaden accepted the award, Emily leaned toward him from her seat in the front row. "So, hero, what comes next?" Jaden smiled, looking out at the unlikely community that had formed around him, from billionaires to his former neighbors from Detroit's poorest streets. "The hard part, proving I wasn't just a successful experiment, but that anyone can change the world with a single act of courage."